Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the seventh of US Halal Consultants free monthly webinars. My name is Elisabeth Myers and I'm a co-founder and executive vice president of US Halal Consultants. As the US emerges from a pandemic depressed business environment, at least we hope, Americans are looking for healthier ways to both live and eat, and businesses are meeting the challenge. Business in the US, of course, is highly competitive, and the US Halal Consultants is the only professional group of consulting group in the US that focuses on halal. We have about a dozen impressive experts, academics, business leaders, lawyers like myself on our roster, and we help businesses which are looking to enter, operate, and or expand in the US halal space. The halal concept is more than just a religious belief, it's a lifestyle. And increasingly, halal is becoming appealing to non-Muslims who are conscious about what they put into their bodies, how businesses treat their employees, and the impacts of human activities on the environment. And it's not just about food. The halal concept involves cosmetics, vitamins and supplements, tourism, Islamic finance, banking, investment, and estate planning, as well as technology and innovation. And you can learn more about this, the US multi-billion halal industry at this year's Halal Expo and Summit 2021 on October 20th to 21st in the Washington, D.C. area. Now, this year's event will be both in person and in virtual, inshallah. But today's webinar is about food. I'm excited that we will have with us today some of the chefs who will be giving cooking demonstrations during the expo in October, and also one of our moderators for the summit, who is an executive in the halal meat distribution business. So without further ado, let me introduce our special guests. And just taking it ladies first, we have with us today Chef Yvonne Maffei. She's a food writer and recipe developer. She's involved in culinary tourism and the halal Mediterranean cuisine and lifestyle. She focuses on the cultural aspects that are at the intersection of food and travel. And she's also the founder of the first blog on halal food and cooking called myhalalkitchen.com. She has quite a following. And we were lucky enough to have her with us last year to present our first ever cooking show at last year's expo. So welcome, Yvonne. And second, we have with us Sarah Wali, who is the Vice President of American Halal Meat, which is a family-owned business based in Springfield, Virginia, that serves more than 200 commercial customers from Baltimore, Maryland to Richmond, Virginia. And she previously worked in media in Dubai and is now a board member at the American Halal Council. So welcome, Sarah. And
thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And third, we have with us today Chef Abdellah Aguenaou, who is an executive chef with more than 23 years in the hospitality industry. He's worked for some of the largest hotels in the US, like the Phoenician Resort in Phoenix, the Marriott River Center in San Antonio, the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, Marriott's largest hotel, and the historical Marriott Wardman Park Hotel. Chef Aguenaou is a graduate with high honors of the Culinary Institute of America and has received numerous awards, including Marriott Chef of the Year. And he is now giving back to society when he helps rising chefs in the American Chefs Federation, teaches students virtually, and assists schools and organizations with the culinary arts. So I am so pleased to have all of you here with us. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to address our topic of the day, which is, why is halal food a healthy option? So I think we're going to start with Chef Abdellah Aguenaou, if you'd like to take the mic and give us your thoughts on why is halal healthy?
So halal is healthy because, first of all, it's you don't cross-contaminate halal food when you prepare it. You always choose a separate place to prepare halal food, meaning you clean an area, you choose a different cutting boards, and you make sure there is no other elements involved, which means no cross-contamination, less allergy exposure to your guests, so less problems. And halal is also because the way where you buy it and how it's sacrificed, it's actually healthy, contaminates less bacteria and less things that actually can cause harm to the body. And that's actually the major thing about why it's safe, why it's healthy, and it's one of the main reasons I see healthy, because again, separate cooking place, separate fabrication, you choose location, less contamination, and less exposure of foreign elements.
So you've talked before about having a halal kitchen being simple. I'm just gonna jump in and ask you that question, because I think many people they don't understand really the concept of halal. And when you talk about cross-contamination and things like that, what do you mean exactly? And how can you prevent against cross-contamination and still keep things simple in your kitchen?
The reason I mentioned cross-contamination, because in many busy kitchens, a lot of chefs and cooks, when they cook something, sometimes they forget to clean a detail, and you just start cutting in the cutting board that may be used for something else, and that's the cross-contamination. Means somebody cut in a cutting board something, we'll say, for instance, a chicken, and then here you are doing the vegetables. So right there, that's a cross-contamination that can cause sickness. But halal, what you do, you actually make sure your area is super clean. You don't cross-contaminate, means the area is super, super clean, super safe. The reason why, because you don't want to put any elements that are foreigners, such as pork, alcohol, items that are actually against the halal rules. So, and the other thing why to keep it simple, because a lot of people try to confuse the halal with the kosher. Kosher food is different than halal, and there is no such a restriction as a kosher. Halal is very simple because it's like cooking it any kind of food, but you just want to make sure there is no foreign elements that can cause this halal food not to be halal, such as pork, alcohol, and other stuff that you don't know what they are. So it's very good to know what you put in your halal food, because like that you're 100% sure it is halal. And halal, the word halal is basically, you have so many items already in your kitchen that are halal. You don't really need to go out and buy them. Vegetables, you have fish, you have a lot of items that are simple in front of you, herbs, oils, nuts, and so many ingredients that are actually right there, halal in front of you. So chefs and cooks don't need to go crazy to make things halal, as well as salespeople when you sell to the guests or front of the house. Waiters, it's simple. Halal items are existable in front of you, and you don't have to do extra things. That's why I call it simple food. Simple, make it simple.
I see. So really, in effect, it's easier to kind of list the things that aren't halal or things that are not permissible to be eaten, rather than just say this is halal, this is halal, this is halal. So that's a good concept to know. Okay, let me turn to Yvonne. Now, Yvonne, you have a lot of, you have a huge following. I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly. It's close to 1 million people on your blog, right? And you've been involved in a lot of cooking demonstrations and teaching people about the benefits of halal. What does halal mean to you? And what should Americans know about halal?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we're not looking at just one element. It's a very holistic way of eating. As Chef Abdellah said, you know, there's vegetables and fruits and nuts. I mean, there's so much that is halal and very little that isn't. And that's what I'm always telling people when I'm educating anybody about the what they can eat in a halal diet. I say, keep it simple. And actually, there's very few things that we don't eat. But I think what I love about halal, and I try to communicate that it's healthy, is that when it comes to meat, and when it comes to food products that are modern food products, a lot of the importance of it starts, well, when it comes to meat, it starts on the farm. For example, we're paying attention to the life of the animal, what the animal is eating, even the medicines that the animal get. I visited a lot of farms, and when they're producing halal meats and stuff, they're telling me, about the veterinarians that come, and the things they pay attention to in terms of the antibiotics they give or don't give the animals when they need them. And so all those details are very important that people might not realize when they're buying for example, a meat product. But when it comes to the food products like yogurts or candy bar or whatever it is, that there's a whole system in place when something is halal certified, for example, that checks all of the, not just the ingredients, but all the byproducts of those ingredients. So, when someone buys something that has a halal label on it, they can be ensured that there's a transparency in that process that's looking at, whether or not these things, what is in all of those ingredients. And the average consumer just, gets overwhelmed with what do all these ingredients mean. And so it is easier to just eat simpler, but the reality is that we shop, we buy different things in the marketplace. And, when you see that something is halal, you can be sure that they've checked all of that out. And when I tell consumers who really aren't so sure about what that halal means, and we go deeper into what is possible to be in your food, people they can't imagine, oh my God, like certain ingredients that can end up in your food. And I tell them, well, those things that are kind of gross or not good for you, they're really not halal anyway. And so when you eat something halal, you can be sure that all of that stuff has been figured out. And so to me, that's what makes it healthier. I know, I think Sarah's going to talk about more of the meat and the sacrifice process, and that's also so healthy. But, I think that the assurance that consumers can get from knowing that things have been looked at, and that label doesn't come very easily to, and not everything that's, halal has to be labeled, but when it is, you can really be sure that things have been monitored, and there's safer for the consumer, in my mind.
Right, and that assumes that we've got a very robust labeling process and certification process. And so that's another area actually we've been talking about in the US Halal Consultants, and also with the American Halal Council, about how reliable are those things. So that's a really good, important point to make for consumer confidence about what is halal. But I do like the idea that if something really is halal, it's good for you, because it doesn't have those ingredients or those toxins or those chemicals or those antibiotics or those whatever that are actually bad for your body. Yeah.
That's what I wrote about in my book. It was, the last book I wrote, it really wasn't a recipe book. It was, it is, there are recipes, but the point of it was to show people, the possibility of what can end up in your food, in your dairy products, in your breads. People just don't know. And when I started to do the research and I tapped into the brilliance of the food scientists and people in this halal community, and I learned so much about what's in our food, what can possibly end up in it, that's not something for just Muslims to pay attention to. That's something every consumer would want to know and does want to know. And so I think when we know better, we do better. But, the average person wouldn't guess that. And quite frankly, it's an issue of the modern food system, right? We wouldn't have this, 100 years ago. So it's important to figure out, what's going on in our food. And halal, when you're paying attention to halal, you really suss out a lot of that junk, let's say.
Right. Well, I want to encourage our audience to please, if you have questions, we would love to get them answered for you in real time. Our wonderful chefs and our Sarah Wali also is ready to answer questions from you. So please put them in the chat and we'll try and get them answered for you, because this is a great area. It was kind of surprising to me for this to be our 7th webinar on the subject of halal this year, and it's the first time we've addressed food specifically because there's so many things to address. So yes, there can be things like contamination from production and processing and transportation and other things as well. But how about, I think Sarah, we lost her for a minute, but you're back with us.
Yes, I am.
Let me ask you from the production end of things, from the meat standpoint. Tell us a little bit about what it means to actually produce halal meat. What does it entail for you? What does it mean for the consumer? What should consumers know and be confident about in terms of halal meat?
Well, first of all, our family business, like you said, has been going for about 30 years. So I've always been blessed with the ability to eat halal. And for me, that didn't just mean I know where it's slaughtered. I've always known where my lamb, goat, and beef were raised, what they ate, what kind of chemicals went in their body. And when I left my home, I had a really hard time eating meat that I didn't know all of that information about. And I think that is very integral to the halal lifestyle and halal living, because as Muslims, we believe it because God tells us that this is the best way to live. But before, he said he gave us the commandments for food as the last commandment and to complete the religion. The first thing he told us was read. So no, you have to know what is going on with the food that you're eating, which is why Americans today, non-Muslims, are starting to realize this is a very important part of our life. We have to be able to pick up our ingredients and read all the ingredients and know what they are. We have to know where this meat is raised. I go to Wegmans now and they have all the information about the farm and whatnot and what the slaughterhouse does to prepare the meat and produce the meat. Now for us as halal, we have, especially at American Halal Meat, our standards are very simple. The animal must be treated properly before it goes into slaughter. The animal must be
What does that mean,
conscious.
Sarah? Sarah, what does that mean to treat the animal properly?
Right. So, for example, my lamb, goat, and beef that we purchase in America all comes from a supplier that purchases it directly from the farm. The animals don't go through the auction process, which it could cause disease. It's a large group of animals that are brought from a large number of farms. They're put in a small area. Sometimes they're not fed properly. Sometimes they're not watered properly. So we've moved away from the mass auction idea because we want the animal to be as halal as possible, and it's completely possible. We don't need to work with these mass production kind of facilities. We do have limits then on our business. We have limits on our production. We have limits on who we can work with. But that's the way it's supposed to be, because we also operate as a halal business. And halal is a way of life, which means that it's good for you, it's good for the community, and it's under what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us to do. So when we're producing the meat for the community, we have to make sure that the animals come in from a very calm, not enclosed in a small area for a long time. They come out, they're in the farm area or in where they're going to be slaughtered in an area that's away from the slaughtering. They're there for a couple of days, they're fed, they're watered, and when they're brought in one by one. And there's a Muslim that slaughters them. He slaughters them completely and lets them drink completely. In a lot of the slaughterhouses here in America, the key is money and numbers. Really, it's all about
volume.
I think I'm back. Okay. It's all about getting the right amount of meat out. What kind of meat, how it gets there is not as important. And that's what makes halal special, is that it's not about the numbers. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this way and it's going to feed everybody. But the process is integral, and making sure that that animal's life is taken in a way that is respectful to the life that it should have. and respectful to you as the stronger being on this earth, you have to then respect that power that God gave you. You have to treat the animal with kindness. You have to slaughter it properly. You have to drain it properly. You have to store it properly. And you have to then, when you send it to the customer, you have to sell it as is. You have to tell them exactly what it is. So we're not allowed to then turn around, freeze it for a bit, and tell you that we're selling you fresh meat. We're not allowed to cheat you in the kind of meat that it is, the part of the meat that it is. That all of that is removed. As a rule, it should be removed from the entire process of buying halal from a halal company like ours.
Wonderful. So, you know, one of the panels that we have in our upcoming Expo and Summit talks about, we kind of have these disruptive titles. Is it faith or is it business? So it sounds like because you don't do this general mélange, this mixing up of all the animals and the auction, and it's much more of a streamlined, individualized approach to treat the animals properly. It probably costs more to produce that meat, but that doesn't mean that your business is not profitable, right? I mean, halal meat business is very profitable, I should assume.
It is extremely profitable, but I always tell people, and it is extremely profitable if you do it the right way, and it's exorbitantly profitable if you play around a little bit here and there. And it's just so, yeah, I don't really want to use that word because a lot of people, they just consider it as a way of business and a way of life, but it really is, and it's a test. It's such a big test, subhanAllah, because we have a sign up in the office that says meat men never have a good day. You have to be really exact. You have to really be concerned about every pound that you're selling to the community, and that God's going to ask you about it. So but it's hard. And I always tell people, you know, a man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us a man and a woman, if they're alone, the third is shaitan. I always say a butcher and a piece of meat alone, and the third is definitely the shaitan, trying to tell him which ways you can make an extra buck here, and it really doesn't take much. I'm really blessed to have my father as my mentor. He's visited slaughterhouses all over the world, and he's seen that even taking an extra inch to cut off of the leg, or, you know, feeding them a certain way, could save the slaughterhouse hundreds of thousands and really have an impact on the quality of the meat. It is our food. Every atom of it goes into our body. Every atom of it is digested into our systems and then used by our bodies. We have to be careful. This is why the Rasul was given that as the last message to close out the deen, because this is your complete body is going to be affected by this. So as people in the business, I would say we have to be super careful about how we sell the meat. And as people who are buying the meat, if you are Muslim, then you know, and you have your belief system, you understand why it's being done. But as people who are non-Muslim, I mean, alhamdulillah, after COVID, I have had so many non-Muslims come into my place and just be like, so what is halal? We're hearing that it's healthy. And then when I'm able to tell them, well, my chickens are raised on Amish farms in Pennsylvania, my goats are raised here, and they're slaughtered in this way, they're shocked. And of course, then the taste ends up being better when you put all that together.
And then they're converted, maybe not to being Muslim, but to eating halal.
Yes, definitely. It's and I would say that the American community has actually been unconsciously pushing for halal in the way that they've been asking how the slaughterhouses are working and where their food is coming from. There's books like Real Food, Fake Food, The Meat Racket, where they're asking. You're asking and you're questioning, why does my food look the way that it does 2 days later? And how does it get from there to me, but look so different? And why does it taste so different? And all of these are starting to come up into people's minds. And they're important questions that we have to answer as a society and face as a society, because we have promoted mass feedings of ourselves and certain dietary specifications that we require. But we haven't been able to understand what's in the environment around us. What can we use and what can be healthier for us, rather than the preserved stuff that we're getting from wherever or being produced wherever. We don't really know what's inside of it.
Right. Yes. Well, I do remember your dad putting on a presentation, I think it was in 2019, about the science of halal slaughter. And it was very, very interesting because I really didn't know much about the science. So it's very specific and very detail oriented and designed to not stress the animals out as well. You know, I think one of the other principles are that animals are not supposed to be seeing other animals being slaughtered. They have to be slaughtered with a very sharp knife, so it's basically one cut, so they're not suffering,
One
and
slice.
they are slaughtered as quickly as humanly
And
possible. So yeah.
and the idea of it being relaxed and
I think Sarah is sort of in and out, but an animal, I think she was going to say being relaxed and not releasing the kinds of hormones and chemicals that cause the stress, the adrenaline that cause the meat to have toxins in it.
There are even studies, I think, about that.
yeah, and really in America, up until we industrialized slaughtering, everybody was slaughtering halal. The farmers, and until today, a lot of the farmers are slaughtering halal, and they string up the animal alive and they cut the neck because they know that the continued heartbeat from when the slaughtering happens until they're actually that the heart stops is really important to pushing the blood out before it dries and clots inside the meat, which is what causes all of these major diseases that we see coming out of the meat. So the bacteria doesn't rest in the muscle itself. It doesn't rest in muscle tissue. It rests in blood tissue. And so that's why the draining is really important. That's why really great aged beef and all of that is aged. It's all of it is out and really healthy fresh meat comes when you do that. Unfortunately, it's also slower. So less production results in less profit, and this is why people should be questioning why are they doing this to our food?
Right, and in such mass numbers, and yes, and then there's a whole question of stunning, which I don't think I want to get into on this program because I know there's a lot of. No, we don't. Yes. Well, I'm glad that we're going to have you with us for this year's Expo and Summit because, you know, we will be able to address all of these issues in more detail over 2 days. So I hope that our audience will be with us then because there's an awful lot to learn and an awful lot of business opportunities in the halal industry.
Yes.
So I don't want to monopolize the conversation, and we still have plenty of time. If our audience has questions, please do put them in the chat. We will try and get them answered in real time for you. And if we don't know the answer, we will come back later. So let's see, Yvonne or Chef Abdullah, in terms of halal cooking, are there suppliers of ingredients that are marketed like prepared ingredients? I remember, for example, Yvonne, last year you did this marvelous cooking show for us for last year's Expo that was totally virtual and so delicious looking. I was sitting in the same spot last year here in Morocco and just almost salivating over what you showed with your dish at the end. But there are prepared halal ingredients that make cooking dishes instead of from scratch kind of easier, aren't there? What can you tell us about that for the very busy, say, professional American woman who wants to cook halal?
Well, I think there are halal products more and more today, convenience products. Like last year's demo was with Saffron Road, and they have, you know, these awesome simmer sauces and things like that. I mean, that makes life easier. But I personally think there aren't enough halal ingredients to work with, in the sense that of things like, for example, vanilla extract, which oftentimes extract is made with alcohol. And that's the type of alcohol that most certifiers would not approve. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of room for a lot of innovation in food products that where people could supply those ingredients for cooking, that something like that, you know, even I personally don't I never ascribe to the belief that wine or alcohol burns off, and there's scientists who will prove that, you know, there's still a percentage of alcohol that remains in cooking. So I use juices, for example, and even juice as a cooking ingredient you have to look at, because they use clarification items that could come from pork in juice. So you have to make sure those are halal. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement in people who can start to create interesting, healthy, natural ingredients to cook with, even though a lot of things are already inherently halal, right? Like Chef Abdellah mentioned. But in terms of like this space of things that can be made, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room for more that I can see would enhance someone who wants someone's cooking, who wants to have easy access to a product that can just, you know, make their cooking 100% halal without having
Well,
to
what that tells me is there is a huge business opportunity here for companies that are, you know, maybe already producing ingredients, packaged ingredients that are used for cooking, to think about the halal market as a destination market, because we already know worldwide it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, but in the US it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the demand is growing, and it's not just from Muslims, even though it is anticipated that Muslims will double in the country by, I think it's 2030. So you're talking about Muslim demand going up and just normal demand going up. We're seeing products that are normally labeled as vegan, for example, and they're also adopting the halal label because they know it's going to appeal to a broader market. So instead of just, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, consumers are more aware today, and you also have the millennials who are not just aware, but they are demanding of products that are ethical, and they want to know backstories. They want to put their money into things that they believe in, and they, you know, find value that fits their lifestyle. And so with the internet just exploded our ability to find out so much. And so companies were forced to be more transparent, which halal has always been anyway. So I do think there's so much room for companies that are already producing some, you know, a variety of products to figure out how to make a certain line of those products in a halal way and market it to consumers who not only Muslims would buy into and use, because of all the things we mentioned earlier. Yeah, great opportunity for business.
A great opportunity. And we have with us, Yvonne is one of our member consultants. So we've got somebody right here on the spot who can answer questions on that. And ultimately, if a company decides down the road to go down that road, she can provide advice on what kinds of ingredients or dishes or flavors or whatever it is should go into that kind of business, and where the gaps are, because she's cooking with those things all the time.
My specialty is really like figuring out how to replicate the flavors of non-halal things. I grew up Italian. I'm Italian and Puerto Rican, so I grew up with all of that. And had to.
I want to add something to what you just said. Sometimes the chefs they really love to cook what they have in a place. You know what I mean? Versus what they can get and how they can create a recipe from things they cannot get. So what I'm saying is sometimes it's good to create recipes and menus from items you can actually easily get or that exists already, versus that you need to go further to purchase or specialty purchase or specialty order. So, like for instance, if I have a guest that comes into the restaurants, one of the restaurants, and it has a lot of restrictions, and they keep telling me I can't eat this, I always ask, what can you eat? And based on what you can eat, I create a recipe for him or her, and they're always happy. So it's the same process I like to apply to halal to make it easy and simple. What can we eat as the halal food? And it's already there, and then you take it and you make it a nice food, nice recipe. And the other thing I want to add, halal tastes good. Not only tastes good, the shelf life is much longer. So if you spend a little bit more money on it, think about something, it's gonna last a lot more than the regular food. So you actually are not going to lose more. Your profit margin is going to be much higher because the shelf life. And the other thing is like you can sell it for a higher price because it's going to taste a lot better. And the other thing I want to add, last one, is you can actually have the whole restaurant, your whole kitchen to be halal without even knowing it. You can just buy all the halal products and just make sure there is no non-halal items versus the other way. Just get rid of non-halal items and have halal items, and just do a menu based on that. And then everybody's going to be happy.
Right. So I'm sorry, Yvonne, go ahead.
I've heard a lot of people say when they've had halal meat for the first time that they say, why does it taste different? It's just so good. And I think it goes back to what Sarah was saying about the sacrifice process. And when the carcass is drained and all that blood comes out, from a chef's perspective, you can tell like the meat is more tender that way. Yeah. If you just look at it from like a texture or the science part of it, but it translates into better taste too. And people do notice that when they've had the latter. People don't really realize how meat is sacrificed or slaughtered in this country and around the world. There's lots of different ways, and some of those ways you would not want to know about, but from a taste perspective, the way that the halal process is done translates into some really tender meat as well.
Tasty too.
Tasty, yeah.
So I keep hearing,
and it really.
Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
I was going to say one little tidbit. It really shows in the liver. I think that's why maybe yeah. It makes such a big difference. The smell and the taste and and even the texture of the liver is completely different from halal and non-halal. So I think this is why over on this side of the world we eat a lot more of the innards and the stuff of the animal, because that's where that it really starts to show right away. In certain parts, Sorry, when there is extra blood left in the body, a lot of it is stuck in the liver also. The liver has some of it. So that extra blood goes bad first. It smells really awful. And I really figured this out actually I was living in Kuwait for a little while, and they were...
Oh, she's frozen. I expect she'll be back. Let me just. Oh, she's back. Okay.
I'm so sorry. But I was in. I make my cat's food. I use raw liver and boneless breast, and I halfway cook it and put the nutrients in it. And when I was doing it in Kuwait with imported chicken, that was not. I mean, I could tell it was not slaughtered the same way, not raised the same way. It would make the house completely stink. When I came here and I started using the chicken that we sell, my husband came up and he said, well, I thought you were going to make the food today. Is this our food? And I said, no, this is the cat food, man. He's like, it smells just as good as our regular food. Nothing smelled in there. He really thought it was for us. And I was like, no, it's the same stuff, same parts, just different slaughter, different type of animal. And that the liver really, if you want to know, ask them for a liver. And see what it smells like.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So how do you know? How do you actually know when the ingredients that you're using are halal? How do you know that? Can you just rely on a label? How do you know that?
You have to read everything. You have to read, and you have to know the ingredients and what each of the ingredients, like where it's coming from. There's byproducts in each ingredient. So, for example, like L-cysteine, this is also what I talk about in my book. L-cysteine is a very common ingredient in bread products, and it's used as a dough conditioner. And the reason why you have to make sure it's halal or not, because it can come from human hair, it can come from duck feathers, or it can be synthetic. Yeah, so
synthetic, and you're putting that in your body? Oh,
exactly. And so the average person doesn't really know that, right? I think most Muslims, like we know, like to look for gelatin, for example. Gelatin is often coming from pork, but it can come from beef too. It can come from fish or algae, you know. So, but there's other things. There's other ingredients that have byproducts that come from parts of animals you really wouldn't want to, you know, in your body. Wood pulp, you know, and then there's the chemicals, you know, which is also that's a whole different topic. But packaging as well, packaging, the glues that are used in manufacturing, like when your food is put on a you know, in the plant when it's being packaged, there's certain oils that drip down and then, you know, machine. So halal certifiers look at all of that stuff because that can end up in your food, right? And so where do those oils come from? It's a very complex process. So consumers, I always tell consumers, if you're overwhelmed, just get the simplest product. If you're buying yogurt, make sure it just has what it's supposed to, and that's it. Don't buy something with all kinds of ingredients. It'll just be easier for you to figure out, you know, and then the rest you can just read the book and figure out like what are the most common things that you end up finding, you know, in food. And you can
Well, I'll put in a plug for Greek yogurt.
That's one of the reasons I was saying it makes it more sense if you buy a product. If you're trying to do halal food, buy a halal products and don't try to buy so many different spices that are like so many cumins, for example. I just use cumin 1, cumin 2, cumin. Just buy cumin, halal cumin. Whatever you're 100% sure it has nothing. It's just an example. Cumin doesn't have any non-halal products. So what I'm saying,
I think you might be surprised at how many products might have non-halal byproducts in them from what we've heard from certifiers.
So if you buy a certified, for example, versus non-certified, and just stick with that, it's much better. The other thing, it's, for example, from your father's corporation, you receive all these products that are super healthy and good and safe. But the best thing for small chefs and small restaurants to do is you need to follow where those items go, because they can be super healthy, super good. But if they go to a small butcher shop that doesn't take care of that and doesn't refrigerate it properly, then you're in trouble right there. So it's very important that we follow the food, where it's coming from, who sells it, where you're buying it, and how do you store it, because it's so important as the chefs. Okay, I got all this halal great stuff. Okay, where am I going to put it? And then you put it right next to the pork loin. So you know what I'm saying. So then you got blood or something.
Or cut it on the same cutting board.
Yeah,
or
so that's what I'm saying. Cross contamination or stuff like that. So it's very important you follow your food. You know where you're getting it from, research, and you know how to fabricate it and how to store it. Proper knife, cutting, and stuff like that. So just from a chef perspective, it's very important to follow your food, make sure you have proper storage, make sure you know where you're buying it from, and make sure you keep it simple. Don't be buying so many different items. You go nuts. You go bankrupt too. And it's so simple to buy, to look for anything you buy the label, and make sure it doesn't have anything that's not, that you don't want it to have, and just buy that. And that's simple as that. Thank you.
Right. Well, talking about labeling, we often see a halal logo on meat, for example, but it doesn't actually give you the method of slaughter. And there's not just one method, one acceptable method of slaughter. As I understand it, there are more. How can we know what method of slaughter there is? Is it hand slaughtered? Is it how can we know?
Well, so
yes,
you have I mean, when you have a supermarket that has a piece of chicken or one chicken in the tray that's wrapped in plastic, they should have a stamp on there that gives you the inspection number for the slaughterhouse that meat came from. If they do not, then the best thing is to ask them. You can tell them, I want to know where this chicken comes from, but the best thing to just say is, what brand chicken is this? And they'll tell you, right? They'll have no choice but to tell you. But another possible way to make sure is ask them for the boxes, and see make sure that they have the boxes that you're looking for. In the DC
the boxes
area,
that they're shipped in, you mean? You mean the boxes that they're shipped in? Okay.
Boxes that they come in with the label on it. There's only 2 slaughterhouses that work up and down the East Coast for chicken, that slaughter hand cut. That's Ihsan Farms and Al Maida, or the Murray's chicken. So I've heard a lot. I have a lot of customers that send me messages with pictures of boxes, and they tell me, sister, I just got this box of hand cut boneless breast for $1.50 less than what you sell. And I have to explain to them, no, this is George's chicken, which is machine slaughtered, and it's raised on a manufactured farm, and it's being sold to them as hand slaughtered, antibiotic free.
Oh my goodness.
And then the other thing I will say is, if anybody tells you that they're selling you organic halal, they're lying. I'm sorry. There is no such thing as
why do you
organic
say that?
halal. Because halal, in and of itself, the process is time consuming, and it's an expensive process. It's not cheap. So it's not, you can't
And
keep
to get the certification, you mean it's expensive to get that certification, or the process itself?
The process itself, yeah, because of how slow the process is, and actually slaughtering the animals and having to do it one by one, it's much slower. So it's we don't produce as much. But the organic requires that you have a organic certification that costs somewhere between $30,000 to $45,000 a year from the USDA, and that you purchase feed for your animals that is organic certified also. It doesn't require that the chicken is antibiotic free. It doesn't require that you handle the chicken in any specific way. It's just those 2 requirements. And it is very expensive to do that. So if you had an organic halal chicken, where I sell my hand cut halal chicken at about $1.80, $1.90, I'd have to sell it at maybe $3 if it was organic. So just be aware and look at the pricing. Go to Costco, check on the pricing in Costco, and then go to your halal market and check on the pricing there. It should be a little bit more, not that much, but it should be a little bit more. And if it's not, ask them.
It should be more at your local place.
Yes, it should be a little bit more at your local place. It should be.
Gotcha. I think now I'm seeing some labels of halal meat companies putting the label that says hand cut halal. That's new. I haven't seen that in years before, because it's really hard to tell. Just within the certification community, you can't. The labels don't indicate the type of method of slaughter that each one goes by or approves. So until those are more like, I don't know if organized is the right word, but until we have like a system where
standards.
Standards.
And
it's also not regulated. It's just not regulated. It's because the United States government, rightfully so, doesn't interfere in religious policies, and it's left up to the mosque next door. Some things are approved as halal and hand slaughtered that people, if they knew exactly what was happening, wouldn't agree with that labeling. We have a brand of chicken here that is hand slaughtered in the sense that, yes, a knife is taken and it's placed on the neck and cut to the neck of the chicken, but that knife also has an electric charge. So that electric charge is first placed on the chicken's head, it goes limp, and then they cut the neck, which
so it's
more blood in the chicken and the heavier weighted chicken and the higher profit. But they sell it then as hand slaughter. So, like you said, and Yvonne, it's great that the hand slaughtered label is starting to show up, but it's not regulated, so it is being abused in some instances, which is.
And it also doesn't tell the whole process. That's the thing, it can be hand slaughtered, but what's going on before that? So I wish there was kind of like a database where you could just like, point your phone to the label, and then like a QR code, and then you could pull up all that information. Wouldn't that be so cool? Where they could.
That would be.
That would be. Sounds like a project for the American Halal Council.
it's
with
true.
some research funding.
Because now you can do that with a lot of other products, and they'll tell you like the backstory of a product, like where the farms of the animals came from. But I think for halal, there needs to be, consumers need to know the right questions to ask, because what ends up happening is that you get this Twitter storm of arguments that go on back and forth about, sometimes blaming a company or a certifier for something that really isn't true, but they don't understand. And, there's variance in halal as well. There's different things that, that are acceptable, and they're different schools of thought, and people don't know all these nuances. And so we have to constantly be talking about this stuff, and we have to constantly, pay attention to those nuances. And then I think within the system, we need to be better about telling, each certifier really needs to tell the whole story somehow to consumers.
Yeah, because
and I think that's one of the big.
Go ahead, Sarah.
They don't. I was going to say that's one of the biggest problems is that I've called a lot of certifiers, and I've asked a lot of certifiers about the process of slaughter, and they are not forthcoming at all about the process. It's like that chicken farm. The only way we found that out was to actually call the farm itself. And because I sound American and I sound like I'm somebody who might be an animals welfare person, she was quick to tell me, no, don't worry, all of our animals are fully stunned before they're slaughtered. And I was like, even the halal ones? And she's like, yes. But then when you call the sales guy, he tells you, no, they're not stunned. So it's just a very, and the certifier, and it will tell you when you call the slaughterhouse, he'll tell you to call the certifier. And I've called certifiers that have told me blatant lies. I've called certifiers who have refused to answer my questions, and I've called certifiers who've told me blatantly, I'm going to just tell you whatever you want to hear. So and so I think within the community of people who are actually in the process of slaughtering, there has to be a required, just openness about what they're doing. But unfortunately, the USDA themselves encourage them not to allow people in with cameras and not to be put in the media, because then they're going to be labeled as anti-animal welfare people and they could get protesters. But then we're blocked from information, and all we get is a lot of sensationalism, and did they go in there and see was something that was really happening, or what? We don't know what we're getting. We're getting a lot of weird information.
It's a PR mess. And people
it is a complete PR.
Yeah, I think we have, we stand firmly behind halal because we believe in it with all our hearts, and we believe that it is healthier. So as a community of professionals, I think we just have to, sort of get our communications straight, and that's for us to work on in the background, because it's becoming thankfully something that all consumers are interested in, and we just have to keep getting better at what we do.
And I would say that, alhamdulillah, the Muslim community has opened this conversation in the West a lot. Just when we got here in the late 80s in DC, there was no masjid. We had Dar al-Hijra, was a small home. There was only about 100, 150 people that used to go there. And now there's over 600 in the area. Halal is demanded. People are asking about their meat, and Americans are wondering, well, why aren't we doing the same? It's logical. It's, as we've been saying, it's healthier. It's better for our community. It's better for our businesses. It's better for our environment. And people are becoming aware of our negative impact of our actions on ourselves and everything around us. So I think it's really exciting, actually, to be in the industry right now. Inshallah, it's moving towards something so great, inshallah.
And despite all of the youth are getting into it. There's younger farmers getting involved in halal, and there's some really cool, like yourself, Sarah. Your father started the business, but you're taking it over. I see that in a few other meat companies, and the youth are just really important because they understand, how things have changed and how they need to communicate, on social media, show great recipes, show the background of the animals, and that's really how it should be. It's the evolving is good. It's really getting better and better. I think in the future we're going to have a really strong presence in the
I think
US.
we just need to educate the rest, a lot of people, a lot of chefs, especially because they don't know. They don't, a lot of,
Right.
I mean, when I did my, I did the presentation with Marriott, I was shocked to see how many chefs don't know anything about halal, or they have this thing like, no, I don't want to deal with it thing. So, but once some of them start to know how simple it is, actually how good it is, how healthy it is, they start getting interest. But the problem is it's only small percentage, and we need to higher percentage. We need to target the normal chefs, normal restaurant, not just the big chains and stuff like that. And then the consumers needs to know also, okay, how do I know it's really 100% halal? If I go to a restaurant and ask for halal food, if you don't have it, what to eat? I mean, I think a good vegan dish or good seafood dish is safer for you than taking a risk of something you're not 100% sure. So I think education is very important to not just the chefs, consumers, and the regular guy. That's this the simple people, because they don't know. A lot of people don't even have no idea what it is. Or they think it's like complicated and stay away from it.
I think also, I've also talked with the culinary students and chefs, and what I tell them is that if you learn these simple methods of halal cooking and cuisine, it opens up a world of opportunities for you to work in really interesting hotels around the world, cruise ships, the tourism industry. If chefs really can, it's something that can really add to their resume, because halal is not going anywhere, and yet because it's global, you can find opportunities in some really cool spots around the world. So I always encourage the young people to, or anybody in culinary, to just add that to their repertoire of the type of food that they know how to prepare.
I had events that are like 3,000, 4,000 people, and they all want halal. So that tells you
there
that's
you
a lot
go.
of money. That's a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine places like Dubai and Egypt and Turkey, and even now Japan and Thailand and Korea, they're getting into the halal space. So if a chef really wants to go to a certain country and they know halal, they can really, put themselves at the top of the hiring fields for restaurants that cater to the halal tourists, which is really growing. So it's really exciting.
China. I actually had chefs from China calling me, asking me what to do, because they have a group that's asking for a halal meal and they don't know what to do. So
wow, yeah, it's exciting.
It's going to grow, believe me. I mean, years ago, look at the vegan. Vegan was like only you get like one order of every like 300 people. Now it's like 6%, so it's like 300 people, it's 18. So it's getting more and more and more. You know what I mean? It's used to be just steamed vegetable and rice. Now it's more like you're looking for a nice soigné, a dish that's like a 5+ presentation and stuff like that. And vegan is a big deal now compared to years ago. So I hope it's going to be the same way. And we just need to educate and make sure we promote and let people know that it's actually the good thing to go for.
Right. And fortunately, we have all you three here to do that. And I think we've seen that over the last 10 years, especially with a company like the Halal Guys, who started off with a hot dog cart in New York City for late night taxi cab drivers because they couldn't find any halal food to eat on that shift. And now look at them. They've got restaurants in over, I think, 600 countries, or maybe it's six. Don't remember the numbers now, but that is an incredible success story that appeals, as we know, to a lot of non-Muslims. And I don't know what the percentages are, but clearly non-Muslims who are interested in halal food, whether it's meat, whether it's other things, is definitely growing. So we're just about out of time here. Do you all have any last comments you want to make before we sign off?
I would just say when we ask why is
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, when we ask why is halal food a healthy option, this is
Well, hopefully she'll come back in a sec.
sorry. Okay, so
Go ahead.
why is halal food a healthier option? Is just because we know what we're eating and we know what we're putting in our body. So if you are going, you want to eat halal, just look at the ingredients, at what you're buying. If you know all the ingredients on that label and you're comfortable with them, go ahead. If there's something there that you don't know, either look it up on your phone really quick and try to figure it out, or don't buy it. Buy something that you know. Make sure you know what you're eating. Make sure you know where it came from. And that's the halal way, is being aware of our impact and what we're doing to our bodies and everything around
And there seems also to be an impact when you talk to the shopkeeper too, when you kind of keep them on their toes as a consumer, to tell them you want to know that this is halal. And because you can't tell from this label, whatever it is, you're not going to buy it. That has an impact on them.
This is absolutely true.
Consumer.
It is absolutely true. It is.
Yeah.
And then it's super important to support those businesses. I say this, I've been saying this forever, you know, and I find a good company and I just want to tell everybody about them. I want to support them. We need to put our money where our mouth is. And, you know, the things that Sarah mentioned, you know, there's unfortunate stuff going on, but you can find those people who are doing the right things and just keep buying from them, because they go out of business if they don't get our business. And so when you find somebody who's doing the right thing, tell everybody about them and get your meats from them, or your products in general. But that's really, really important.
Well said. Well, we are out of time. It's been a joy to have all of you three here with us to give us your insights on the halal food industry. You can, as the halal community, support businesses by joining us at the Halal Expo and Summit in October, and join us for our future monthly webinars with the US Halal Consultants, where consultants just like Sarah and Yvonne and Chef Abdullah can answer questions and really enlighten us on the halal industry in all its aspects. So thanks for being with us, and be sure to tune in next month.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having us.
And keep it halal.
Keep it